My hands are not what they used to be. My joints are swollen, my skin is blotchy, and my veins are swollen like rivers on a map. 79 years in this world is no joke. Every morning I wake up thinking it's gotten even more painful, even harder to get out of bed, but I never show it. Today is Thursday, the day I sort my medications for the week ahead. 7 small containers with compartments for morning, afternoon, and evening. Heart pills, blood pressure pills, joint pills, and a dozen others. An army of tiny soldiers that keep me in line. I methodically move them from bottles to boxes, squinting blindly at the labels, even though I know the routines by heart. My house in Lakewood is on a quiet street lined with old maples. I've lived here for 32 years. After Vernon, my husband, died, I refused to move. Not because I'm too attached to this place, but because I can't stand being told what to do. Mom, you need something smaller, my daughter Iris keeps telling me. This house is too big for you alone. My response is always the same. When I decide I need to make a change, I'll let you know. In the meantime, I like having the space available. In fact, the house isn't that big at all, just 3 bedrooms. But it does have a study that once belonged to Vernon and is now mine. The room with the massive oak desk where I'd once reviewed reports and balance sheets, looking for discrepancies and errors. 35 years as an auditor had taught me to notice the smallest details and not to trust even the most innocuous numbers. I finished with the pills and carefully closed all the containers. The kettle on the stove whistled, announcing that the water was boiling. Tea was my one weakness. Not the usual bags from the supermarket, but real, brewed, which I order from a special store. Every morning, a cup of Darjeeling, strong, rich, with a drop of honey and a slice of lemon. With the cup in my hand, I walked to my office. On the desk was a stack of papers I'd looked through last night. Account statements, copies of tax returns, screenshots of emails, the result of my 6-month investigation. Hugh Baxter, my daughter's husband, had always struck me as suspiciously successful for an accountant at his level. A new car every 3 years, expensive watches, private schools for the kids, vacations on exotic islands. Even when Fiddler and Table grew up and moved out, their lifestyle remained the same. Something didn't add up here, and I decided to find out what it was. Vernon always said I was too picky about Hugh. Quincy, give the kid a chance. He's trying to provide for Iris and the kids. But I saw something my husband didn't. The emptiness behind Hugh's smile, the greedy gleam in his eyes when the conversation turned to money. I was right. It took time and a few old connections, but I found what I was looking for. Hugh was diverting his clients' funds into high-risk investments using dummy accounts. And the worst part is, my daughter knew about it. Not just knew, but was complicit. Deep down, I always suspected that Iris had inherited my calculating nature, but not my caution. Even as a child, she knew how to get her way, manipulating those around her with the smile of an angel on her face. I tried to channel this trait in a positive direction, in ambition, purposefulness, but apparently I failed. Next to the computer was a photograph in a simple silver frame, a Vernon in a military uniform, me in a strict suit, and between us, 10-year-old Iris in a frilly dress she hated but wore for the photo. We looked like the perfect family. What a delusion. The phone rang, snapping me out of my musings. My daughter's name popped up on the screen. Yes, Iris? My voice sounded steady and firm as always. Mom, did you remember about Sunday? Iris's voice was too chipper, too energetic, playful. About Sunday? We talked last week, family dinner, at our house, 6 o'clock. We have big news. We didn't talk about any of that. I remembered every conversation I'd had with my daughter in the last month, and not one of them had mentioned any family dinner. Iris was lying, and doing so ineptly. Oh yeah, of course. Sorry, just got caught up with my papers here. Papers? What papers, Mom? There was alarm in her voice. Just sorting through some old papers. Nothing of interest. So what's the special occasion for dinner? A pause. Too long. Just want to get together as a family. The kids will be there too. It's been a while since we've all seen each other. I knew that wasn't true. Fiddler had only been to visit me 3 days ago, dropping in for tea after work, like he does every Tuesday. And Tabble and I had talked on the phone on Wednesday, and she hadn't said a word about some family gathering. Sounds wonderful. Can I bring anything? No, no, just come. We'll get everything organized. Another lie. Usually, Iris always asked me to bring my apple pie or homemade lemonade. Okay, dear. See you Sunday. After the call, I sat still for a long time looking at the picture. Something was brewing, and I was pretty sure I wasn't going to like it. I walked to the bedroom and opened the closet. On the top shelf behind a stack of scarves was a small box. It held what was left of Vernon, his military decorations, the letters he'd written to me when he'd served overseas, our marriage papers. And then there was his will, which I'd changed after his death without informing Iris or Hugh. Vernon left everything to me, and I was to divide the inheritance between Iris and the grandchildren. But a few months ago, I quietly changed the terms. Now, should anything happen to me, our house and most of the assets would go directly to Fiddler and Table, bypassing their parents. Iris and Hugh would receive only token amounts. I took out the will and put it on the bed. Then I went back to the study and gathered all the evidence of Hugh's financial machinations, including the letters where Iris had discussed the details of their scheme with him. I put it all in a hard, dark blue folder. Now I had to think, what were Iris and Hugh planning? Why this family dinner with important news all of a sudden? And why did I feel like it had something to do with Dr. Sherman's visit 2 weeks ago for a routine checkup? I guess I shouldn't be surprised. After all, I've never been an easy person. Demanding, critical, uncompromising. That's how my coworkers have described me. Vernon was the only one who saw behind that armor as a woman who was simply afraid to show weakness. I was always especially strict with Iris, hoping it would toughen her character and prepare her for life. Perhaps I had overdone it. I returned to my desk and began to work. Whatever their plan was, I would be ready. I would make copies of all the documents and give them to my old friend and lawyer Peter Woodruff, just in case something went wrong, and the originals. I'll take the originals with me to their family dinner. Let them think they can beat the old lady. I was an auditor before they were even born, and I've uncovered more schemes and frauds in my career than they can imagine. The sky outside the window began to darken. I turned on the desk lamp and continued working. By Sunday evening, everything should be ready. I don't know what's in store for this dinner, but I'll be ready. I rarely allow myself to reminisce. At my age, the past can be like a quagmire from which there is no escape. But today, as I prepare to meet my daughter and her family, I can't help but think about how we got to this point. Vernon and I met in 1963 at a fundraiser. He had just returned from his first overseas assignment, a stately military man with serious eyes and an unexpectedly soft smile. I worked as a junior auditor for the company that sponsored the event. He asked if I danced. I replied that I only danced to good music and only with interesting people. He laughed and said he would try to be interesting. We were married 8 months later. It was not a passionate love marriage like in novels, but a union of two people who respected and valued each other. We were both ambitious, organized, with clear plans for the future. Vernon saw me not just as a wife, but as a partner. And I found in him the reliability that was so lacking in my life after the death of my parents. Iris was born 2 years after we were married. Pregnancy was not in my plan so soon. I was just starting to move up the career ladder. But Vernon was happy, and I decided that I could combine motherhood and work. It's hard to remember the early years of Iris's life. I was a young, inexperienced mother, torn between home and office. Vernon was gone a lot, military service. I hired babysitters but was constantly dissatisfied with their work, firing one after another. I wanted my daughter to have the best of everything, even if I had to sacrifice time with her to do so. When Iris went to school, I noticed how skillfully she manipulated teachers and classmates. This trait both frightened and delighted me. In her, I saw a reflection of my determination, but without my restraint. Vernon said I was too hard on the girl, but I believed I was preparing her for the real world, where no one would do her any favors. By the time Iris was a teenager, we were more adversaries than mother and daughter. She rebelled against everything I valued: discipline, order, self-control, and I, instead of trying to understand her, only pushed harder. When Iris announced she was marrying Hugh Baxter, I was against it. Not because Hugh was a bad man, but because I saw in him a weakness of character that I didn't think would counterbalance my daughter's impulsiveness. Vernon, as always, was more diplomatic. "Give them a chance, Quincy," he used to say. They're young, they'll learn from each other. And I backed down, though inwardly I never fully accepted the union. Vernon died of a heart attack 10 years ago, suddenly, without warning. Gone in his sleep, quietly and peacefully, as if he simply chose not to wake up. I remember waking up that morning and not hearing him breathe. I remember checking for a pulse, first on his wrist, then on his neck. I remember calling an ambulance and then sitting next to him, holding his hand, already knowing he was gone. Something in me broke that day. Not my heart. I never believed in such metaphors. Rather, it was my ability to trust life that broke. Vernon was a constant, a stability, an anchor. Without him, the world became more fragile, unpredictable. Iris and Hugh came to the funeral with their children. Fiddler was 18, Table was 14. They cried, hugged me, said the right words. But behind it all, I could feel Iris's relief. Now she was free from the critical gaze of her father, who, though soft, still saw right through her. After Vernon's death, I had grown even more distant from them. Not because of grief, but because of growing suspicion. Hugh suddenly got a promotion at his firm. They bought a new car, then a second car. Sent the kids to expensive colleges. Iris started wearing designer clothes she'd only dreamed of before. I noticed the first signs about 2 years ago at Fiddler's birthday party. Hugh got the call, left the room, but I overheard a scrap of conversation. The client can't find out about this. Transfer it offshore. We'll have it all sorted out by next quarter. At the time, I thought I had misunderstood or misheard, but those words stuck in my head. Then there was Christmas dinner, where Hugh and Iris were arguing in the kitchen, thinking no one could hear them. "It's too risky, Hugh," Iris was saying. "We could lose everything." "Trust me," he replied. "I've calculated everything. In a year, we'll be able to buy a house in Florida." I started gathering information, discreetly at first, through mutual acquaintances, through old connections in the financial world. Then more actively, I hacked Hugh's email. It's amazing how much you can find on the internet about password cracking if you know where to look. I discovered correspondence with clients to whom he was giving special investment advice by funneling their money through shell companies into high-risk ventures. If the investment paid off, the client got the promised interest, and Hugh got much more through the back door. If not, the client lost money, but Hugh still got his commission, and Iris knew all about it. What's more, she helped him by using her connections at the law firm, where she worked as an administrative assistant to provide documentary cover. How could I have raised a daughter capable of such a thing? Or was it inevitable? A heredity that couldn't be escaped? I'd always been tough, demanding, but never overstepped the line of the law. Could it be that Iris only saw the rigidity, but didn't see the principles behind it? This morning I gathered all the papers into a folder and went to see Peter Woodruff, my old friend and lawyer who had helped me with the change of will. His office was in an old building in downtown Lakewood, without fancy glass partitions or designer furniture. Peter, like me, favored the classic's heavy wooden desks, bookcases to the ceiling, silence. "Quincy, you look worried," he said when I entered his office. "I have reason to be concerned, Peter," I replied, placing the folder on the desk. "I need you to make notarized copies of all these documents and keep them with you, with instructions." Peter scrutinized the contents of the folder, his face growing more serious with each page. "Are you sure you want to go this route, Quincy? This is your family." "Precisely because it's my family, I can't let this continue. I have obligations to my grandchildren, to Vernon's memory, and to myself." Peter looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "Good. I'll make copies and have them certified, and I'll prepare a document with your instructions. When will you need them?" "By tonight. We're having a family dinner tonight." I couldn't hold back a bitter smile. "I think there will be surprises for everyone there." While Peter worked on the paperwork, I sat by the window, looking out at the street. Lakewood hadn't changed much in the years I'd lived here. The same neat houses, the same mowed lawns, the same people going about their business, just not getting any younger. Neither am I. "Here, all done." Peter's voice snapped me out of my reverie. He handed me the originals and showed me the copies he'd put in his safe. "Are you sure you don't want me to attend this dinner?" "No, it's a family affair. I can handle it myself." I took the folder and stood up. Thank you, Peter, for everything. Be careful, Quincy, and call me when it's over. I nodded and walked out. It was cold outside, but clear. I decided to walk home. It was only a 20-minute walk, and I needed to get my thoughts together. At exactly 5 hours and 30 minutes, I was ready. Dark blue suit, the pearl necklace Vernon had given me for our 25th anniversary, minimal makeup. My hair, long since grayed, was gathered into a neat bundle. In my hand, a file folder. I hailed a cab, though I usually prefer to drive myself. Today, I wanted to be able to have a glass of wine if the situation called for it. The cab arrived right on time. Another small victory of organization over chaos. Iris and Hugh's house was in a newer neighborhood in Lakewood, with large lots and modern architecture. They had bought it 5 years ago, after Hugh had gotten a substantial bonus at work. Now I understood where the money had really come from. Driving up to the house, I felt a strange calmness. Not humility or indifference, but that special clarity of mind that comes when you know you're doing what you have to do. Vernon would understand. He always said that every man has a line that must not be crossed. Iris and Hugh had crossed theirs. Now they'd have to face the consequences. I paid the cabbie, checked the contents of the folder one last time, and headed for the front door. Through the large windows, I could see the table set, the figures of people moving about the room. My family. People I'd known all their lives and who appeared to be complete strangers to me. I rang the doorbell. Iris opened the door, smiling in a light blue dress, with the pearl earrings I'd given her for her 30th birthday. Her smile was too wide, her eyes too shiny. I knew right away she was nervous. "Mom, it's so good of you to come." She hugged me and I could smell her perfume. Too sweet, too rich. "Come on in. Everyone's already gathered." In the living room connected to the dining area, everyone was indeed there. Hugh in an expensive sweater that I knew cost more than he could officially afford. Fiddler, my grandson, with his perpetually disheveled red hair. He took after my father in that. And Table, frail, with a short haircut and attentive eyes so similar to Vernon's. "Grandma!" Table was the first to come up to me, hugging me sincerely without being playful. I'd always felt a kindred spirit in her, just as observant, just as prone to analysis. "Hi, Grandma." Fiddler hugged me with one arm, the other still holding a glass of some kind of cocktail. His eyes were a little wary. "You look great." "For your age, you mean?" I smiled, showing that it was a joke, but I could see he was slightly embarrassed. "Quincy, good to see you." Hugh came up last, giving me a peck on the cheek without really making contact with me. "Wine? I've discovered an excellent Cabernet." I accepted the wine and made my way to the table. It was set with excessive luxury: silverware, crystal glasses, linen napkins. Iris was always trying to impress, especially me. "How's your work going, Fiddler?" I asked, sipping my wine. "Still analyzing data for that technology company?" "Yes, Grandma. Working on a big predictive analytics project right now. Boring details. You won't be interested." "Don't be so sure about that. I may be old, but I still understand numbers better than most." Tabell laughed softly. "That's for sure. Grandma can put any analyst to shame." "You're exaggerating, dear." Iris set a platter of roast duck on the table. "Mom was an excellent auditor, of course, but technology is very different now." "The principles are still the same," I replied. "There are always inconsistencies if you know where to look." I noticed Hugh and Iris glanced over at me. The tension in the room became almost palpable. "Let's sit down." Hugh pointed to seats at the table. "The duck will get cold." Dinner began with an awkward silence, interrupted only by the clinking of cutlery and Iris's falsely cheerful remarks about the weather, the new restaurant in town, the upcoming fundraiser. I answered politely but briefly. Fiddler and Table were unaccustomedly silent, as if they sensed something was wrong. "So," I finally said when dessert was served, "what was the big news you wanted to break?" Iris looked at Hugh, then at the children. Fiddler stared at his plate, and Tabell frowned. "Mother, we've been discussing this as a family for a long time," Iris began. "Not the whole family," Table remarked quietly. "Table, we've talked about it." Hugh pulled her back. "Your grandmother doesn't always know what's best for her." I felt a cold calm build up inside. The same one that always came when I found a decisive clue in a confusing case. What exactly did you two talk about? I asked, looking directly at Iris. She straightened up as if preparing for battle. Mom, Dr. Sherman contacted us after your last checkup. He's concerned about the early signs of dementia. Is that so? I sipped my wine. Interesting that he violated doctor-patient confidentiality. He didn't, Hugh quickly interjected. As your next of kin, we have a right to know. Only if I'm incapacitated, which is clearly not the case. But it may become so in the near future. Iris took my hand. Her palm was cold and wet. Mom, we're worried about you. You're living alone in a big house, refusing help, talking about some papers, documents. And what do you suggest? I gently released my hand. There's a very good establishment, Sun Terraces. It's not an ordinary nursing home, but a real independent living complex, but with medical staff on site. You'll have your own apartment, but 24-hour care if you need it. I looked at the grandchildren. Fiddler still didn't look up, but his jaw was tense. Tabelle frowned openly, looking at her mother. And who's going to pay for this establishment? I asked. That's where your house comes in handy, Hugh interjected. The real estate market is booming right now. If you sell the house, you'll have enough money to live in the complex for a few years. And if I say no? Iris and Hugh looked at each other again. Mom, we've already consulted a lawyer. Given Dr. Sherman's diagnosis, we can apply for guardianship. For your own good. Exactly. For your own good, Quincy, Hugh chimed in. We just want you to be taken care of properly. I set my fork aside and looked around at them all. So you took a vote, decided that I'm no longer a part of this family, that I needed to be removed, isolated, and all under the pretense of caring. Mom, don't say that, Iris exclaimed. We love you, but in doing so, you're going to take away my home, my independence, and my dignity. I stood up calmly. And all for what? To gain access to my assets? That's not fair. Hugh stood up as well. We're only thinking of your well-being. Grandmother, please, Fiddler began, but I held up my hand, stopping him. You know, there's an old saying, be careful what you wish for. It might come true. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folder. You want me not to be a part of your family? Well, so be it. I placed the folder on the table and headed for the exit. Mom, where are you going? We're not done talking. Iris followed me. I turned around at the door. Oh, I think we're done. Everything you need to know is in that folder. Enjoy your reading. What's in there? Iris's voice trembled. Something you should have kept more secret, I chuckled softly. Tell Hugh that for a financier, he's surprisingly lax with digital security. I stepped out onto the porch and closed the door behind me, leaving Iris standing in the hallway with her mouth open. The night air was cool and fresh after the stuffy atmosphere of the house. I took a deep breath and walked down the street. I didn't need a cab. I wanted to walk, to feel like I could still get around on my own, make my own choices. A few minutes later, I heard shouting from the house I had just left. So they'd opened the file. I continued walking without turning around. The folder contained everything: account statements showing transfers of Hugh's clients' money to offshore accounts, emails where he and Iris had discussed how to circumvent financial controls, recordings of conversations I secretly made at family meetings when they thought I couldn't hear or understand, and, of course, my amended will, where most of my estate went directly to Fiddler and Table, bypassing their parents. I thought I would feel satisfaction, or even schadenfreude, but instead all I felt was fatigue and sadness. How did we get to this point? How could my only daughter, my only child, plan to actually take away my freedom for money? There was the sound of quick footsteps behind me. I turned around and saw Tabelle running towards me. Grandma, wait! She caught up to me, breathing heavily. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about their plans with that nursing home. I believe you, honey. I took her hand. It was warm and strong. A young woman's hand. You weren't supposed to know. It was their decision. What's in that folder? Mom and Dad they yell at each other. I've never seen them like that. The truth, Table. Just the truth they'd rather hide. I looked into her eyes. Sometimes the truth hurts, but it's better to know it than to live a lie. Should I go back there? She looked confused, like a little girl. That's your decision, but you can come with me if you want. I'm going to have tea at home. Tabel turned toward the house where the muffled screams were still coming from, then looked at me again. I want to know the truth, Grandma. The whole truth. I nodded. Then let's go home. I'll tell you everything. We walked down the quiet street alone, grandmother and granddaughter, leaving behind the house where the carefully constructed lies and pretenses were crumbling. I knew this was only the beginning of the storm. Iris and Hugh would not give up without a fight. But now, this minute, I felt a strange relief. The masks were off, the game was over. I thought of Vernon, of what he would say now. He'd probably be disappointed that it had come to this finale. But he'd also realize that sometimes you have to make tough choices to protect what really matters: truth, justice, and the future of those who truly deserve it. Behind our backs, Hugh came running out of the house. He held a folder in his hands and shouted something, but the wind carried his words away. Table and I didn't turn around. The past was behind us and the future was uncertain, but at least it would be based on truth and not lies. I'll call Fiddler, Table said quietly. He should know. Yes, I agreed. He should know. And in the house we left, Iris and Hugh finally fully realized what was in the file. They saw the evidence of their crimes collected with the thoroughness of a professional auditor. They saw and realized that their carefully laid plans had just collapsed, burying everything they had tried to gain by deception. The morning after family dinner was surprisingly uneventful. I woke up at first light, as I had done for the last 50 years of my life. No alarm clock at my age. My body knows when it's time to get up. Birds chirped outside the window, as if nothing had happened, as if the world hadn't turned upside down last night. Tabble stayed the night at my place. She slept in her old room, the same one I'd prepared for my grandchildren 10 years ago, and never remodeled, even when they grew up and came less often. I walked quietly past her door. I didn't want to wake her. She'd been awake for a long time last night, asking questions about her parents, about what exactly they'd done. I answered honestly, but without too much detail. Some things children are better off not knowing about their parents, even if those children have been adults for a long time. In the kitchen, I made my morning tea and sat by the window. The phone on the table had been silent all night, but I knew it was the calm before the storm. Iris and Hugh aren't the kind of people who give up without a fight, especially when it's not just their reputations on the line, but their freedom. As scripted, at 9 o'clock sharp, the phone came to life. First came a message from Iris. Mom, we need to talk. There's a misunderstanding. Then another. Please call me back. It's very important. Then Hugh started calling. I didn't answer a single message or call. Enough had been said yesterday. Instead, I called Peter Woodruff. Quincy, I've been waiting for your call. How did yesterday go? Exactly as we suspected, Peter. They wanted to declare me incompetent and put me in a nursing home, to sell my house to cover expenses. Peter whistled quietly. Now that's a twist. Although, given what we know about their financial affairs, not so surprising. They need money and fast. You think they're in trouble? Judging from the documents you showed me, yes. Some of their risky investments haven't paid off. Clients are starting to ask questions. They need new capital to plug the holes. And they've decided my house is the perfect source of that capital. I sipped my tea. They're trying to contact me now. I think they want to make a deal. I wouldn't advise you to meet with them alone, Quincy. They're desperate, and desperate people are capable of many things. I'm not afraid of them, Peter. I know. That's always been your strength. And your weakness. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Table was awake. I have to go, Peter. Keep your phone on. Table walked into the kitchen wearing the same clothes she was wearing yesterday, only more rumpled. Her hair was disheveled, her eyes still sleepy, but her gaze was clear. Good morning, Grandma. Any news? Only messages and calls from your parents. I haven't answered. Tabel nodded and poured herself some tea from my teapot. Fiddler's called me 3 times since this morning. Wants to meet up. Says it's hell at home. And what did you say? That he could come here if he wanted to talk. She sat down across from me. That's okay, right? You don't mind? Of course not. It's his house too. Always has been. We ate breakfast in silence, each immersed in our own thoughts. I reflected on how quickly things had changed. Just yesterday morning, I had a family, albeit a complicated one. And today, I'm sitting in the ruins of what's left of it. The doorbell rang around 11. Table jumped up. It must be Fiddler, and ran to open the door. I stayed seated, listening to their voices in the hallway, a quiet, tense conversation I couldn't make out. They walked into the kitchen together, Table and Fiddler, so similar and so different at the same time. Brother and sister, my grandchildren, who suddenly found themselves between two fires in a war they hadn't started. Grandma! Fiddler came over and hugged me awkwardly. He smelled of cigarettes, though as far as I knew he didn't smoke. I should have gotten here sooner. I'm sorry. It's all right, darling. Sit down and have some tea. Fiddler sat down, but refused the tea. His fingers drummed nervously on the table, a gesture I knew from his childhood. It was the way he always did when he was agitated or worried. I spent the whole night with my parents, he finally said. They're in a panic. Dad says you've got it all wrong, that these documents don't show the full picture. And you believe him? I asked calmly. Fiddler ran his hand through his hair. I don't know, Grandma. I'm confused. They're my parents, but the documents you gathered. Tabell showed me the copies you gave her. It sounds like a real fraud. It is fraud, Fiddler. Your father used clients' money for his own investments. And when some of them didn't yield the expected returns, he started creating a pyramid scheme, using the money of new clients to pay interest to old ones. Like a Ponzi scheme? Fiddler asked, and I nodded. Exactly like that. A classic Ponzi scheme. And your mother knew about it. What's more, she helped by using her law firm connections to set up shell companies. Fiddler covered his face with his hands. I can't believe it. They've always been so right. Especially Mom, with her eternal lectures about honesty and integrity. It's easy to be honest when it costs you nothing, I remarked. The real test of character comes when you have to choose between honesty and profit. And now they wanted to put you in a nursing home? Without your consent? Table looked indignant. How could they? Money, dear. They needed the money from the sale of my house to plug the financial holes in their scheme. And to do that, they needed control of my assets. The easiest way to get it was to declare me incapacitated because of dementia. But you don't have any dementia, Fiddler exclaimed. Of course I don't. But Dr. Sherman is an old friend of Hugh's. It's not so hard to get a proper diagnosis if you really need it. We fell silent. Outside the window, the rain had begun to fall, a light spring rain rustling through the leaves. Such a peaceful sound in the midst of the chaos that was going on in our lives. Fiddler's phone rang, breaking the silence. He glanced at the screen and dropped the call. Dad? Tabell asked. Yes. He's been calling every 15 minutes since I left. Wants to know where I am and what I'm saying. And what are you going to do? I looked at my grandson. Fiddler straightened up, and at that moment he reminded me so much of young Vernon that my heart clenched. I'm on your side, Grandma. What they were planning to do to you, it's wrong. And if they're really guilty of financial fraud, they need to answer for it. Tabell put her hand on her brother's shoulder. I'm on Grandma's side too. Always have been. I felt a warmth in my chest, not from pride or triumph, but from gratitude. In the midst of all the betrayal and lies, my grandchildren had chosen the truth. They chose me. It won't be easy, I warned them. Your parents will not give up on you. They will pressure you, manipulate you, make you feel betrayed. Are you sure you're ready for that? Do we have a choice? Fiddler grinned bitterly. Turn a blind eye to their crimes. Let them put you away in some nursing home against your will? No, grandmother, no choice. At that moment, the intercom rang. On the small screen, I saw Iris and Hugh standing at the gate of my house. There they are, I stood up. I'm not going to let them in. I'll talk to them. Fiddler stood up as well. We'll talk to them, Tabell corrected him. Together, they walked out, leaving me alone in the kitchen. Through the window, I watched them walk to the gate, but they didn't open it. The conversation with my parents was happening through the bars, symbolic, considering the circumstances. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could see the gestures. Energetic, sharp on the part of Iris and Hugh, more restrained on the part of my grandchildren. Iris pointed several times toward the house, apparently demanding to let them in. Fiddler shook his head. At one point, Hugh grabbed his shirt through the bars, and Tabelle stepped between them, pushing her father away. Finally, my grandchildren turned and walked back toward the house, leaving Iris and Hugh shouting after them. I stepped away from the window, not wanting them to see that I was watching the scene. Fiddler and Table came back into the kitchen. Their faces were pale but determined. "They demand to see you," said Fiddler. "They say it can all be settled if you'll just give them the original documents and forget about this nursing home talk." "And what did you tell them?" "That you didn't want to see them." Tabelle sat down next to me. "And that your lawyer already has the paperwork." "Dad, he was furious. I've never seen him like that." "They said they're going to sue you for defamation, for invasion of privacy, for unlawful collection of information," Fiddler added. "Let them sue." I calmly poured myself more tea. "I obtained all the documents legally. And as for invasion of privacy, let them first explain in court the origin of the money in their accounts." "What happens now, Grandma?" Tabelle looked lost. "Now? Now we wait. I've given copies of the documents not only to Peter, but also to the financial police. Anonymously, through a reliable person. The investigation is already underway." "You didn't tell us about it." Fiddler looked shocked. "I didn't want to put you to the trouble before your time. You have a right to know, but you don't have to be involved." "But we are involved now," Tabelle said firmly. "We're on your side." I looked at my grandchildren, at their young, determined faces, so similar to my own at their age. In them I saw a future, a real future, not based on lies and machinations. "I'm grateful to you," I said simply. "But you need to realize what you're walking into. Your parents may find themselves under investigation. They may have to answer to the law. Are you prepared for that?" Fiddler and Table looked over, and I could see the pain in their eyes, but also determination. "We didn't choose this," Fiddler finally said, "but we won't turn a blind eye to their crimes either. Whatever happens next, we're in this together." Tabelle nodded, agreeing with her brother. "We're together, Grandmother." Outside the window, the rain intensified, turning into a real downpour, and we sat in my kitchen, three against the world, an old woman and two young people bound not only by blood, but by choice. A choice to side with the truth, no matter how bitter. The 3 days after the family dinner passed in a strange lull. Fiddler and Table stayed at my place, both of them taking a leave of absence from work, citing family reasons. I didn't mind. My house, always so quiet and orderly, was suddenly filled with voices, with footsteps, with the sounds of life. It was unusual, but not unpleasant. Iris and Hugh kept calling and texting, first aggressive, threatening lawsuits, then more conciliatory. I didn't respond. The grandchildren ignored their attempts to contact either, though I could see how hard it was for them to do so. No matter how wrong Iris and Hugh were, they were still their parents. On the fourth day, Thursday, I woke up earlier than usual. Something woke me up. Not a sound, more like a premonition. I went to the window and saw Hugh's car parked across the street from my house. He was sitting behind the wheel, clearly watching the house. How long had he been there? All night? I went down to the kitchen, made my morning tea, and called Peter Woodruff. "They're here, Peter, watching the house." "I'll be there," he answered immediately. "Don't open to them while I'm gone." "You know I'm not afraid of them." "I know, but you must also realize that they are desperate. I got the information yesterday. Hugh is having problems at work. One of the clients has started asking questions about his investments." "So it started." I looked out the window. Another one had pulled up to Hugh's car, Iris at the wheel. "They're both here. Looks like they're getting ready to talk. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Try not to let them in before I arrive." I hung up the phone and continued to drink my tea quietly. The grandchildren were still asleep. Young people like to lie in bed. I did not wake them up. This conversation has to happen between me and my daughter, between me and the man she chose to marry. The doorbell rang at exactly 8 o'clock in the morning. I took my time answering it. Let them wait after everything they had planned. It was the least possible punishment. It rang again, more insistently, then again and again. Finally, I went to the door and opened it. Iris and Hugh stood on the threshold. Both of them looked haggard. The wrinkled clothes, the circles under their eyes, the pale faces. Iris had clearly been crying, eyes reddened, makeup smeared. "Mom," she stepped forward. "We need to talk." "Hello, Iris." I didn't step back, didn't invite them in. "I'm listening to you." "Not on the doorstep." Hugh tried to put authority in his voice, but it came out pathetic. "This is a serious conversation." "Which you could have started back at dinner," I remarked, "instead of planning how to put me in a nursing home." "That was, it's not what you think." Iris clasped her hands together nervously. "We were just worried about you, about your health." "Iris, we both know that's a lie. Let's not waste time. What do you want?" They looked at each other, a quick, nervous glance. "We want to find a compromise," Hugh finally said. We we understand that you're concerned about some aspects of our business, but we can explain everything." "I doubt that we can, but come in if you want to. Just be aware, my lawyer will be here shortly." I stepped back, letting them into the house. They entered tentatively, as if expecting a trap. I led them into the kitchen, neutral territory, not too formal, but not too intimate either. "Tea?" I offered, honoring the rules of hospitality instilled in me as a child. "No, thank you." Iris sat down at the table. Hugh remained standing, shifting nervously around the kitchen. "To business, then." I sat down across from my daughter. "You've come to ask for a compromise. I'm listening to your proposal." Hugh began to speak quickly, rambling, jumbling his words. He explained the complex system of investments, spoke of temporary difficulties with liquidity, of unforeseen market fluctuations. It was all just a smokescreen, professional jargon designed to confuse and distract attention from the point, the outright fraud with the client's money. I let him talk without interrupting him. When he was done, I simply asked, "And what do you suggest?" "We want you to give us all the documents and copies," Iris said, "and forget about it. In exchange, we promise never to bring up the nursing home issue again." "That's very generous of you." I couldn't contain my sarcasm. "You won't try to put me in an institution against my will, and in return I'm supposed to turn a blind eye to your fraud?" "It's not fraud," Hugh objected. "It's complex financial transactions. The clients knew the risks." "Really?" I raised an eyebrow. "All the clients, including Mrs. Dawson, the widow who put all her savings into your safe investment portfolio? Or Mr. Clark, who was going to use the investment proceeds to pay for his son's college?" Hugh turned pale. "How do you know?" "I've been an auditor for 35 years, Hugh. I know how to investigate. And I know how to recognize financial fraud when I see it." At that moment, the doorbell rang again. I got up and went to open it, knowing it was Peter. Iris and Hugh remained in the kitchen, talking quietly. "Are you okay?" Peter asked, walking into the house. He'd always been tall and stout, but he'd gotten even more massive with age. Gray hair, broad shoulders, an imposing presence. In full, I led him into the kitchen. "Let me introduce Peter Woodruff, my longtime friend and attorney. Peter, you know my daughter Iris and her husband Hugh." Peter nodded to them with cold politeness. They responded with the same strained nods. "So," Peter sat down next to me, "I understand you want to discuss some sort of compromise?" "They want me to give them all the documents and copies," I explained. "In exchange, they won't try to declare me incompetent." "I see." Peter looked unfazed, but I'd known him long enough to see the anger in the depths of his eyes. "And that's all you have to offer? And what do you offer?" Hugh finally sat up, as if his legs refused to hold him up. "The truth," Peter said simply. "A confession, compensation for injured clients, and acceptance of the consequences of your actions." "You're crazy!" Hugh jumped up. "This is going to ruin our lives. I'll lose my license, my job, maybe even my freedom." "Have you thought about Mrs. Dawson?" I asked. "About how your actions could ruin her life? Or about Mr. Clark and his son?" "We'll fix it," Iris interjected. "Give us time. We'll refund the clients, close all the questionable accounts. No one will get hurt." "Time's up, Iris." I looked at my daughter, the woman I'd given birth to and raised, and who had become a stranger to me. "Peter, show them." Peter pulled a folder from his briefcase, almost identical to the one I'd left on the table at Iris and Hugh's house. He opened it and placed a document with official stamps in front of them. "This is an application to the financial police," he explained. "It hasn't been formally filed yet. But unless you agree to our terms, we'll turn it over to the authorities along with all the evidence we've gathered." Iris began to cry. Not quiet tears, but actual sobs that shook her body. "Mom, please, you can't do this to us. We're your family." "Family doesn't try to put its members in a nursing home against their will," I replied coldly. "A family doesn't cheat the people who trusted them. A family does not build their well-being on lies and fraud. What do you want us to do?" Hugh looked broken. "A clean confession," Peter replied. "You'll go to the police yourself and tell them everything. You'll return the money to the customers, every last dime, and you'll accept whatever punishment the court hands down." "That's insane." Hugh pounded his fist on the table. "You can't make us self-destruct." "You've already self-destructed." I stood up. "The moment you decided you could fool people and go unpunished. The moment you decided you could run my life without my consent." I walked to the window looking out at my manicured garden. The wind gently swayed the branches of the old apple tree that Vernon and I had planted when we first bought the house. So many memories. So many years gone by. "You have a choice," I continued without turning around. "Either you voluntarily confess and try to fix what can still be fixed, or I will turn over all the paperwork to the authorities myself, and then you will face the maximum penalty." "Would you really do that?" Iris's voice sounded disbelieving. "Would you send your own daughter to prison?" I turned to her. "Would you really send your own mother to a nursing home against her will? Would you sell her house to cover your financial shenanigans?" Iris didn't answer, only lowered her head. "I'm giving you 24 hours to think about this," Peter said. "At this time tomorrow, I expect your decision. If I don't get it, the application will be made at once." "You don't realize the position we're in." Hugh looked hunted. "If we confess, it's all over. My career, our reputation, our future." "You should have thought of that when you started your scheme." I sat back down at the table. "Every action has consequences, Hugh. Always. No one can avoid payback forever." "Mom, please." Iris raised her tearful eyes to me. "We're your family, your blood. And Mrs. Dawson, Mr. Clark, all the others you've deceived, do they mean nothing?" "We'll fix it," Hugh said quickly, desperately. "Give us a chance. We'll sell the house, the cars, pay back everyone who's been hurt. Just don't send us to jail." I looked at them, my daughter and her husband, broken, scared, willing to do anything to avoid responsibility, and I felt no triumph, no satisfaction, only fatigue and sadness. 24 hours, I repeated. "Think, and make your decision." They walked away, hunched over and clinging to each other as if they were afraid of falling without support. I watched them through the window, two figures walking toward their car in the light spring rain. "Are you really going to report them?" Peter asked when we were alone. "Do I have a choice?" I sat down at the table again. "They've cheated people, Peter, ruined other people's lives for their own comfort, and wanted to do the same to me. I know." He put his big hand on mine. "I just want to make sure you're ready to go all the way." "Ready," I nodded. "This isn't revenge, Peter. This is justice." We sat in silence, two old friends bound by years of shared memories and mutual respect. Outside the window, the rain continued to fall, washing the dust off the leaves and grass, making the world cleaner and fresher. If only it were as easy to wash away the sins and mistakes accumulated over the years. "Will they make the right choice?" Peter finally asked. "I don't know," I answered honestly, "but even if they don't, I'll make mine." Peter nodded and squeezed my hand. We both knew that tomorrow, when those 24 hours had passed, everything would change completely. But we were ready for it. I was ready. The call from Peter woke me up at 5 in the morning. I knew immediately that something serious had happened. He'd never bothered me this early. "Quincy, Hughes disappeared," he said without preamble. "What do you mean disappeared?" I sat up on the bed, instantly awake. "He didn't come home from work last night. Iris called him several times, but his phone was off. And this morning she discovered that Hugh's passport and a substantial amount of cash they had stored there were missing from the safe. He ran away." It wasn't a question, but a statement. It would seem so. Iris is hysterical. Anna called me half an hour ago, demanding to get in touch with you. And what does she want? A meeting. Says she's willing to do whatever you want to do to help her find Hugh. I was silent for a long time, pondering the situation. Hugh had run away, leaving Iris to deal with the consequences of their shared crimes. Typical of a man of his disposition, avoiding responsibility at all costs. Quincy? Peter's voice brought me back to reality. I'm not going to help her look for Hugh, I finally answered. But it's okay to meet. Have her come to my place at 10 in the morning. I will attend. No, Peter. This is a conversation between mother and daughter. He was silent for a moment, clearly disapproving of my decision, but he didn't argue. Okay, but if anything goes wrong, call me right away. After the conversation, I couldn't go back to sleep. I got up, made myself some tea and sat by the window, watching the world wake up. The first rays of the sun were coloring the sky a soft pink. The birds were beginning their morning concert. Nature continued its eternal cycle, indifferent to human dramas. Hugh ran away, left Iris alone to deal with the aftermath. I wasn't surprised. I'd always seen that weakness of character in him, that willingness to set others up to save himself. But Iris, she should have known who she was relying on, or was love really that blinding? At 8 o'clock, Fiddler and Table woke up. I told them the news at breakfast. Daddy ran away? Fiddler looked shocked. Just left Mom? Looks like it. I didn't soften the truth. Took the passport and the money from the safe. Probably been planning it for a while now. But where would he go? Table was pale, but holding up better than her brother. Abroad, I suppose. Someplace where there's no extradition. He may have created a backup plan long ago in case his scheme unraveled. And Mom, she's coming here? Yes, at 10 o'clock. I think you'd better not be present when we talk. It will be difficult. They nodded, understanding. After breakfast, both of them left. Fiddler for a run, Table to a local coffee shop to work on their design projects. They tried to keep it together, but I could see how hard it was for them. Their world was falling apart and there was nothing they could do about it. At 10 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. I opened the door and saw Iris, gaunt, her eyes red with tears, her clothes crumpled. She looked like she had aged 10 years overnight. Mommy! She literally fell into my arms, sobbing. He left me. Well, just picked me up and left. I led her into the living room and sat her down on the couch. I brought a glass of water and a box of tissues. I waited for her to calm down a bit. Tell me what happened, I finally said. Iris wiped away her tears and began to talk, confusingly jumping from one thing to another. After our ultimatum, she and Hugh had quarreled. He accused her of not controlling me well enough all those years. She screamed that it was his financial shenanigans that had brought them to this situation. He left, slamming the door, supposedly for work. Never came back in the evening, didn't answer his cell phone. And in the morning, she found her passport and money missing. $150,000 in cash, Iris sobbed. We kept it in the safe for a rainy day, and his spare passport, the one he got after he lost his first one 2 years ago. I realized at once that there had been no loss. Hugh had purposely created a spare document for himself in case he fled. And what do you want from me, Iris? I asked when she finished her story. Help me find him. You have connections. You know people. Why would you want to find him? To get him to drag you into running away too? Or to get him to come back and share the responsibility? Iris fell silent, clearly unprepared for such a question. I don't know. I just feel so lost without him. He abandoned you, Iris. Abandoned you when things got hard. Ran off to save his own skin, not thinking about you, about the kids, about the consequences. That says all there is to know about him. You never loved him. Iris heard a familiar, accusatory note in her voice. I never trusted him, I corrected. And as you can see, you were right. We sat in silence. The sun was shining outside the window, the wind ruffling the curtains. Such an ordinary, peaceful day for a conversation that could change our lives forever. What's going to happen to me now? Iris finally asked. She looked small and frightened, like a child lost in a crowd. That's up to you. I looked her straight in the eye. You can follow Hugh's example, try to run away, hide. Or you can do the right thing. Confess, return the money to the victims, accept the consequences of your actions. I'll go to jail, she said quietly, as if she was only now truly realizing the reality of the situation. Perhaps. But if you cooperate with the authorities, tell the whole truth, the court may take that into account in sentencing, especially if you help get the money back to the clients. What if I, too, leave? I shook my head. Then you'll be on the run for the rest of your life. Constant fear, a new identity, not being able to see your kids, your friends, your family. That's not living, Iris. It's existence. She covered her face with her hands and cried again, quietly, hopelessly. I didn't bother to comfort her. Some lessons must be learned through pain. I don't know if I can, she whispered at last. Courage comes not from the absence of fear, but from the determination to act in spite of it. I remembered Vernon's words. That's what your father used to say. Dad? Iris looked up. He would be so disappointed in me. Yes, I didn't soften the truth. But he also believed in redemption, in that a person can always make the right choice, even if they've been wrong before. We talked for another hour. Iris hesitated, cried, got angry, hesitated again. I could see this struggle inside her, between wanting to escape responsibility and realizing that it was impossible. At last she stood up, exhausted, but as if with some new calmness. I'm going home. I have a lot of things to think about. Will you make the right decision? I asked. I don't know what's right, Mom, she smiled bitterly. But I won't run anymore, that's enough. When she left, I sat in silence for a long time. Then I called Peter and told him about our conversation. He promised to prepare all the necessary paperwork for Iris to voluntarily turn herself in if she decided to take that step. Then I called Table and Fiddler and briefly described the situation. They had both decided to come home to be near their mother, regardless of her decision. I was grateful for that Iris would need all the support she could get. In the evening, when the house was empty again, I went out into the garden and sat on a bench under an old apple tree. The sun was setting, coloring the sky orange and purple. I looked at my house, at my life, at the ruins of what had once been my family. I had won, if you could call it a victory. I had exposed fraud, thwarted plans to incarcerate me, achieved some semblance of justice. But at what cost? Hugh is on the run. Iris may be facing jail time. Fiddler and Table are traumatized by their father's betrayal and their mother's fall. And how did I feel? A strange mixture of cold satisfaction and deep bitterness. Satisfaction that the truth had prevailed, that evil had not gone unpunished, and bitterness at the realization that that truth had destroyed what I cared about. Was I right? Could I have done anything differently? Turn a blind eye to my daughter and son-in-law's crimes to preserve my family? Let them take over my life? No, I knew I couldn't. Some principles cannot be betrayed, even for love, especially for love. Dusk came, a cool breeze touching my face. I remembered Vernon, his quiet strength, his wisdom. What would he say now? Would he approve of my actions, or would he advise me to show more mercy? Truth will always find a way, Quincy. He liked to repeat those words. Our job is to stay out of its way. I didn't get in the way of the truth. I helped it come out into the light, and now I have to live with the consequences. The next morning I received a phone call from Fiddler. His voice sounded strangely calm. Grandma, Mom has made up her mind. She's going to the police, today. Table and I will be with her. Is there anything I can do to help? No, we can handle it. There was a short pause. She said to tell you that you were right. Always. After that call, I sat staring out the window for a long time. Behind it was still the same world. The sun, the trees, the passing cars, the people going about their business. A world that hadn't stopped, hadn't changed because of our family tragedy. By late afternoon, news of the voluntary appearance of Iris Baxter, who had confessed to complicity in financial fraud, had already appeared in the local media. Her name was mentioned alongside that of Hugh Baxter, the wanted man. My name was nowhere to be found. Peter made sure of that. A few days later, Fiddler and Table came to see me. They told me that Iris had been released on bail pending trial. She began cooperating with the investigation, providing information about Hugh's schemes, places where he might be hiding, shell accounts, and companies. She changed, Table said. It's like she's woke up from a long sleep. She wants to see you, Fiddler added. When you're ready. I wasn't ready. Not then. I needed time to process everything that had happened, to sort out my feelings for my daughter. Days passed, weeks passed, life went on. I went back to my routine, tea in the morning, walks in the park, books, occasional visits from friends. But something had changed in me. It was as if the heaviness I'd carried for years was gone. Not completely, but enough for me to breathe more freely. The police never found Hugh. He was rumored to have been spotted in South America, but there was no confirmation. Iris waited for the trial, living in her empty house. Fiddler and Table spent a lot of time with her, supporting her as best they could. They didn't leave me behind either, calling, visiting, talking about their lives. One evening, sitting on the same bench under the apple tree, I realized I was ready. Ready to see Iris, ready to begin the long and difficult road, if not to reconciliation, then at least to understanding. I pulled out my phone and wrote a quick message. Come over for tea on Sunday, Mom. I don't know what lies ahead. I don't know if we can ever go back to the way things used to be. But I do know one thing. The truth has indeed found its way, which means we might find ours too. In the meantime, I sit in my house, in peace and quiet, with a sense of accomplishment and justice done. And if I talk to Vernon sometimes as if he were still here, sitting beside me and nodding, listening to my musings, well, that's my right. The right of an old woman who's been through a lot and kept her dignity. The truth will always find its way, Quincy, Vernon seems to whisper to me. And I nod back, knowing he was right, always.